Hello, this is Ralph Rio. I'm with ARC Advisor Group. And this little presentation is around industrial applications for blockchain. I'm going to give a little introduction to blockchain because there's some aspects that are particularly important for industrial applications. And then I will review some example pilot programs that exemplify the business benefits associated with these industrial applications. So the primary role of blockchain is for business process automation. And that takes two kind of roles. One is where there's a central authority. Each node along a supply chain, for example, sends information to the central authority, and the central authority coordinates. One problem with this approach is the nodes don't know what is going on among themselves. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Essentially, they are blind. The second approach is when there's a lot of manual systems associated with the supply chain. So there may be a lot of documentation, particularly with global trade, for example, approvals. And currently a lot of that is done via fax, email, sometimes surface mail, sometimes a courier. And those manual systems are both expensive, labor-intensive, and time-consuming too. So the use of blockchain eliminates those manual systems and provides business process automation. We see that on the right-hand side where the nodes in the supply chain, the red line represents the flow of materials, and the blue line represents the flow of information. The left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and this is done electronically, quickly, so the supply chain can run more smoothly. Now, it's important in the industrial sector to talk about the types of blockchain that are deployed. And I'll compare with the Bitcoin with the ones that are used in the industrial application. So with Bitcoin, there is a lot of encryption and security and various protocols determine the correct block and the correct chain among the participants. And this is done in a fashion that allows everyone to read access and everyone to make a transaction or have write access. So there's a lot of overhead associated with that. And as a result, according to what I've read, Bitcoin is limited to anywhere from 3 to 7 transactions per second. That low scalability would be unacceptable to nearly all industrial supply chain type of applications. So to get the higher scalability, they peel back a little bit on the encryption and security. And to do that, it becomes, in the case of the read access, private in the sense that you have to apply to become a member of a consortium, and you become approved. So it isn't open to everyone. It's only open to those people who've applied. And in a similar manner, the write access becomes permissioned. And again, one has to apply to the consortium and be given permission to have that write access. So by scaling back some of the encryption and other algorithms, they can improve the performance to hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions per second with private and permissions versions of blockchain. So to sum up, the cyber currency ones, versions of blockchain, like Bitcoin, will use public and permissionless versions that typically have scalability problems, Bitcoin being the primary example. The ones applied to the industrial sectors, every one of the and consortiums, that 35 consortiums that I looked at, use a private and permissioned version of blockchain to achieve a higher performance and scalability. Now, I did examine 35 pilot programs in a variety of industries. I'm not going to review every one of them. I'm going to initially just get into the primary benefits of those blockchain proof of concepts and consortiums. So the top ranked primary benefit has to do with automated document sharing. And after this, by the way, I'm going to just give a quick review of one consortium that represents each one of these benefits. So the automated document one happens to be international trade, where there's a lot of documentation. Supply chain visibility. This is common in both food and beverage and pharmaceuticals. And I will show a food and beverage example. Trust selling, because you know the source of the goods, they become more valuable, and I'll go over one in the mining industry. Secure messaging. This is around protecting IP, and 3D printing is an example. Sharing operational data among people who could be potentially competitors. So this is kind of a co-opetition example, and I'll go over one in the power industry for this one. In all cases, they're sharing immutable data, and everyone invests. There is no one person who receives all the investment necessary, and everyone benefits. Just all the benefits don't go to one person. So this is a case where the consortium is independent entities. Everyone invests and everyone benefits. Now, just the trade lens example. There is a lot of documentation associated with international trade. This one is an example where it's passed or become useful both in North America as well as Europe. So we see this definitely international. It's gotten a lot of traction, 94 organizations involved. As you see in the bottom, nearly 6% of all the ocean-going container cargo. So this one definitely has traction, and it is around that documentation sharing, business process automation to facilitate international trade. The next one is around the supply chain visibility. This one I like to talk about because it really exemplifies the benefit. In the case of fresh vegetables like lettuce and fruit that you eat doesn't get peeled, any contamination on that, like salmonella, for example, gets passed on to the person who eats that food. There are a lot of foods like chicken, for example, that have salmonella contamination. It's common, but in the case of chicken, you cook it so that the bacteria associated with salmonella gets killed, and when you eat the chicken, there is no health risk as a result. But in the case of fresh vegetables, they don't get cooked, and any salmonella or any other bacterial infection creates a real problem. Now, with electronic health records, the FDA has been able to identify a problem much more easily. There's a case in 2019 where there was 100 occurrences where 70 people went to a doctor's office, 30 people went to a hospital, no one died, but those 100 occurrences occurred across a population in the United States of over 100 million people. So literally it was 1 in 100, the occurrence. But because of the analytics that are available today and the electronic health records, the database, the FDA was able to identify the problem and initiate a recall. Now, typically a recall costs $10 million at least. So that's in a case where blockchain is not deployed. So by being able to use blockchain and identify the source of it, we see in the case of Walmart here, when they did a test, manual methods took nearly 7 days to identify the source. Obviously, that's too long and then drives the broad, expensive $10 million type of recall. By using blockchain, they were able to identify the source within 2.2 seconds, which now allows them to focus the recall just to the bad products. Now, this pilot was completed back in 2018, and Walmart has vastly expanded the program. I will mention that there are several other supply chain visibility applications for food. There's the IBM Food Trust program in North America that is going on. There's another one for Europe, the EIT program that's going on, and China has its program. So this has become a very common application, supply chain visibility to narrow a recall in the food industries. The example of trust selling, because when cobalt now is required in electric motors for electric vehicles, and the automotive companies want to be able to use ethically sourced cobalt, and when the source of the cobalt can be proven to be ethically sourced, they're willing to pay more for it. So for cobalt, there's a consortium to assure that, and it improves the revenue and the margin for the cobalt miners. The next one around protecting IP. This is a neat case where a Singapore-based engineering firm had a design for a part. It was sent to a 3D printer in Los Angeles so that part could be installed in a Boeing aircraft and avoid an outage of the aircraft because it was currently out of stock. That successful trial occurred in early 2019, and because they used blockchain, the Singapore-based engineering firm could be assured that they were properly remunerated for the use of their IP to make that part. This one is around sharing operational data. We have a case in Europe, where there's a lot of windmills, there's solar panels, et cetera, generating distributed power. Now, how do you balance all that solar power with consumption? There is no way to store data in the grid, so it's necessary for these companies to share operational data, and these companies in a way are competitors, so there's some co-opetition here. They share operating data to assure that the grid is properly managed, it's not overloaded, and power is successfully distributed to consumers. So in summary, we have blockchain enabling the sharing of immutable data, or data that can be trusted, for business process automation in the industrial sectors. There are two general types of applications where one is with the blind nodes can share information, and the other one is replacing manual systems to have business process automation and faster and lower cost business processes. If there are any questions about what was presented today, by all means, I'm willing to reply the answers. You see my email address in the lower left-hand corner there. By all means, please send me an email. I'd be delighted to answer your questions. That not only helps you by answering questions, but often I find questions help me deepen my research and gain a better perspective around blockchain. Thank you very much for listening.